Welcome back. It's great to be with you. Again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to look at the attitude of the leader. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 23 verse 7 that as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. See, the Bible's a wonderful book because it expresses truths way before anyone had discovered them in modern science or psychology. The father of modern psychology, a gentleman called William James, he said this: "The greatest discovery of my generation is that humans can alter their lives by altering their attitude of mind. As a man thinks in his heart, so he is." So it's common to think that leadership is all about learning skills, developing yourself, doing all these courses online or going to colleges and that, and those are all very important. But if you have a rotten attitude, you'll be a rotten leader. Attitude is what is inside of you that is going to compel you forward. It is going to be the way you work. Now, as Christian leaders, our attitude isn't just determined by our circumstances, it's also going to be determined by our faith in God. If we know that God has called us, wants us to move forward, wants us to accomplish great things for Him, then we're going to have an attitude that says God can do all things, that nothing is impossible for Him, and that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength, whatever the circumstances. See there in Philippians chapter 4 when Paul says those words, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." He says this after he has talked about having plenty at times in his life and after he has talked about great struggles and having little in his life. Yet he can still do all things through Christ who gives him strength. So what is your attitude? Well, it's been described in many different ways. The attitude could be the advanced man of our true selves. In other words, it's what people see of us that we don't really see sometimes in ourselves. It's the roots are inward. Your attitude roots are inward, but the fruits are going to be outward. What you cultivate in your heart will one day be expressed through your words and through your actions. Your attitude can be your best friend, or it can be your worst enemy. Your attitude can attract people, or it can repel people. Your attitude is going to be more honest and consistent than any words you say. Your attitude will never be content until it is expressed. That means that if you're an overly negative person, that will bubble up out of you. People will know you for that. If you're a positive person, people will equally know you for that. Someone has said that attitude is like the librarian of our past. That what we have lived through can affect our attitude, can affect our outlook, can affect our perspective. And sometimes, in spite of what we've lived through, we have to cultivate a good attitude, a healthy attitude that begins to say we're going to move forward, we're not going to stand still. That attitude is also the speaker in our present. It is what people will hear and see of us right now, and your attitude will be the prophet of your future. If you find that as a Christian leader you are marching out and no one is following you, all you're doing is taking a walk. And actually, attitude has a lot to do with that, because if you have a bad attitude towards people, if you don't love people, if you don't share their woes and their highs and their victories and their mourning and their sadness, if you don't have a great attitude towards people, you will find they will not follow you. If we think about the spies that were sent into the promised land by Moses, we discover an attitude difference as well as a faith difference. We discover that Joshua and Caleb saw the fruit in the land. They saw it. But the other 10 spies, they saw the problems in the land. We discover that Joshua and Caleb saw themselves in God's hands. That's a great attitude, that we know that we're in God's hands. The other 10 spies saw themselves as small and weak. Joshua and Caleb were optimistic about their future, about what was possible. The other 10 spies were pessimistic about the future. And Joshua and Caleb were encouraged by stepping out in faith. The other 10 spies prevented the people from making progress. Someone once said to me that if you have turkey thoughts plus turkey talk, you'll equal a turkey walk. What do you mean by that? It's basically that the attitude is something that is in our mind. And very often in our lives and in Christian leadership, the battle is won or lost in the mind before it's ever expressed. You know, we have to understand that our attitude will carry us places where people don't want to go. It will carry us places where other people cannot go because of their poor attitude. But as leaders, we can live by example and show people what a great attitude is. For many years in my church office, I had a quote pasted to the wall. And it says this. It's by a chap called Dennis Waitley. He was a sports coach in America, and this is what he says. I want to read it to you. He says, "The winner's edge is not a gifted birth, a high IQ, or built-in talent. The winner's edge is all in the attitude, not aptitude. Attitude is the best criterion for success, but you cannot buy an attitude for $1 million. Attitudes are not for sale." I'm grateful that the winner's edge, as he says, is not in a gifted birth or a high IQ or built-in talent. I didn't have a gifted birth. I don't particularly have a hugely great IQ. I'm not a member of Mensa, although I have a reasonably good IQ. And I don't have many inbuilt talents. But one of the things I am in control of is my attitude about what I'm facing, how I'm going to face it, and how I'm going to come through it. Someone once said this about spiritual success. If you want to be distressed, look within. If you want to be defeated, look back. If you want to be distracted, look around. If you want to be dismayed, look ahead. But if you want to be delivered, look up. Look up. That's a great attitude. As a Christian leader, always keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, who's the author and perfecter of your faith. And then you'll begin to cultivate an attitude that others will want to follow and model themselves.